Ready? All right, good afternoon. I'm here today to give an update on the Randy Cox internal affairs investigation. This case started in June of 19th in 2022 when Randy Cox was brought into our facility after getting severely injured in our prisoner van. The internal affairs investigation looks at the whole incident that happened, and then also the state police looked at the incident that happened, and the officers involved were arrested on November 28th of 2022. We restarted the internal affairs investigation in December of 2022. That investigation, and I thank Lieutenant Colon and her staff, Sergeant Melendez, Sergeant Carr, Sergeant Fennessy, and Sergeant Koenig for the hard work they did to complete this investigation. That was completed on March 6th, and then the process is the officers have a Laudermill hearing with me. Those were completed on March 17th and March 20th. The officers involved in those hearings were Sergeant Segui, Officer Diaz, Officer Lavandier, and Officer Rivera. Officer Presley had retired on January 7th. The IA came back that he was found as a sustained IA, but he is retired, so he would not see me for discipline. What happened at those Laudermill hearings is I sent all the officers to the Board of Police Commissioners, and I'm recommending termination. It was a long process. This department has gone through a lot since that incident. This community has gone through a lot. And the message to the community is that we will be transparent, and we will be accountable, and we will hold our officers accountable. The message to the officers is that this administration does have your back, and that mistakes do happen, but we will not treat this community disrespectfully, as happened in the Randy Cox situation. The next part of the process are the Board of Police Commissioner hearings. I can only recommend something. I cannot actually fire or hire, so it goes to the Board of Police Commission. We're estimating that will happen the end of April to the beginning of May for all 4 officers. And some of the things that I wanted to talk about that we have done since this incident: we've done a lot of training in this department. We've done policy revision. We have trained, we have put seatbelts in all the prisoner vans. We've trained officers how to safely put people in the back of the vans with seatbelts. We have changed our policy to transporting with vehicles. We only use the prisoner transportation vans for the court runs. We have then trained in de-escalation, specifically ICAT, which is Integrated Communications Assessment and Tactics. We have trained in ABLE, which is Active Bystander, which if in this situation, when viewing the video, if one of the officers had said, let's stop and keep Mr. Cox in the same position, maybe we wouldn't be here today. I don't know. So active bystanding, and then also Kingian, which is a Martin Luther King conflict resolutions. We also have changed policies in transportation, detention, rules of conduct, and as a department, we're looking at over 50 policies to make sure something like this, like a seatbelt not being in place, doesn't happen again. We're also looking to be accredited by the state, and that requires us to look at all these policies. We also, in the meantime, had numerous community listening sessions, and we talked to the community about how we move forward as a police department. I did inform the mayor about this, that the IA report was complete and what my recommendations were. This is an internal investigation, so the mayor wanted to respect that process, and that's why I'm meeting with you today. He will be available at another time to make comment. And I do appreciate that, because this is my decision with my team, and it was a decision that we came to after reviewing the internal affairs investigation. There were also some other officers with other violations. They haven't been to the laudermill yet, but not to the severity of termination, and that will be dealt with. And I just want to conclude, saying to the community that we said we would be transparent and accountable, and that's what we're doing. And to the officers that I still believe in procedural justice. Procedural justice is when you give people a voice. If we gave Randy a voice that day when he said he was injured, we wouldn't be here today. If we treated him with dignity, we might not be here today. If we were neutral in our decision making when he said he was injured, we might not be here today. And I asked my officers to continue to take each situation under those guidelines and to treat members of this community with respect and dignity, whether they're an arrestee or a complainant or whatever their case may be. That concludes what I have to say, and I'll just open it up for questions. Just know that there's not a lot I'm going to talk about because the next stage of the process is the presentation to the board.
Chief, which specific general orders did the internal investigation find that these officers violated? What were the grounds for your investigation?
So I'll read them off, but the IA will be available through FOI as well. Rules of conduct, 1.03 and 1.0305, law abiding. Rules of conduct, principle 2, integrity. Rules of conduct, principle 4, trustworthiness. Principle 5, courtesy and respect. Section 2, rules of conduct. And then they all receive those charges. And then specifically, obviously, Officer Diaz, who was driving the van, has some charges related to prisoner van, driving the prisoner van, some cell phone, and then Sergeant Segui also has some supervisory and detention supervisory charges related to our general orders.
Can you break this down kind of in more, I guess, common terms and language of what did this find? That there was a breach of these like 5+ things for each of these officers?
Yeah, so we're governed by our general orders, and so necessarily like the first one, law abiding. They were arrested for this incident, so they weren't law abiding in their actions. So yeah, as our team looks through it, they look at each general order and find out what may or may not have been violated.
And you mentioned, can you clarify this point, other officers? What's that?
Yeah, so other officers were found at fault for different violations.
That are not amongst?
No, not amongst those four.
But that are relating to this same incident?
Yes.
How many other officers?
2.
Was that at detention or somewhere else? How were these officers involved?
So there's another supervisor involved from the street, and then someone in detention. But a much smaller role. I won't be sending them to the Board of Police Commissioners, but I will be disciplining.
Did you name them?
It's in the IA report. It's in the internal affairs report. I just want to make sure that the union has talked to them. This is yeah, it's 2 of our officers.
What is the discipline, if you could clarify, for the others?
So I can only discipline up to 15 days suspension. So it'll be less than that.
Chief, why move to fire these officers before the criminal court proceedings conclude?
Because we had enough evidence from the internal investigation. I think the days of waiting for criminal cases to conclude need to stop. That's one of the things the community has asked us to do. The community has asked us to be transparent, be accountable, and be swift about it. This is not swift. It's been 9 months. There's been a lot of thought and investigation put into this.
I wanted to build on that point. That was the question I had was, since that happened, Juneteenth of last year, I know you and Mayor Ellicker spoke out about the Tyree Nichols incident where we saw, I think, somewhere around 20 days. I mean, what do you, and I've spoken to kind of representatives around that family. what do you have to say? I mean, speak to particularly that timeline. I mean, it's taken 9 months for an incident that was captured all on video. How do you? I mean, what? I'm just.
Yeah, so we have a different process than Memphis, right? We have a different union, we have different guidelines, we have a contract we have to go by, and the reason after the incident occurred and it was found there might be something criminal, we turned it over to the state police. They then carried the case up until November 28th. So that's a big chunk of the time. Then we took it back over in December and worked on it from December till March 6th. So, and it's two different cases, right? They're looking for criminal aspect, arrest, that type of thing. We're looking for policy violations and rules of conduct and that type of thing. So it's two different investigations. So I would say that that's the timeline that we had. I'm not sure what Memphis's rules are when it comes to contract and that type of thing, so.
As you just build on that a little bit too, I mean, particularly how big is that, I mean, the video, I just go back to that part because it seems like most of the violations that, I mean, you cite here are from that video. So, I mean, I guess how long did it take to kind of find those violations? And, I mean, the video's been available for, you know, did you get my question?
So you can't just go on the video, you also have to do interviews. There were numerous interviews that had to be done. There was numerous different angles of the video that had to be done. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just watching the video, right? And the other part of this too is I don't want to present the Board of Police Commissioners with a half investigation and then after, whether they're terminated or not from the Board of Police Commissioners, they then go forward to labor hearings and could even get their job back. We deal with that a lot. So we want to make sure everything's done right, everything's done correctly, so that through these hearings, this is sustained.
Have you spoken with the officers about your decision to
Yeah, when they came on the 17th and the 20th.
And what was their response?
That's a Laudermill hearing. It's kind of like a private situation. So, I mean, obviously they were upset, but I'm not going to talk about what was said or anything.
So these officers, they have the opportunity to contest this?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, and then just so that we have the specifics, so end of April, there will be these hearings with the Board of Police Commissioners. And so they have to then go through your findings and soon we'll talk to these officers to kind of explain that process a little bit more.
So there'll be, a hearing will be put on with the union attorneys, their personal attorneys, and the city's attorney and myself and the investigators. It happens a lot. We just had one not too long ago. There'll be a back and forth, there'll be a hearing, and then the police commissioners vote on termination. They could change it to a year suspension or whatever they feel is adequate.
And do each officer, they have their own individual hearing?
Yes. The union had asked us, so some of the officers share attorneys, but the union had asked us for individual hearings, and we're going to grant them that.
If they are terminated, how does it affect their pension, if at all?
Well, Ron Presley retired, and he got a pension. I don't know the exact status of all their pensions. You would need at least 10 years to get a partial pension.
And Assistant Chief Cohen, did you oversee the investigation? If so, could you tell us a bit about the role you played? Was it that you and your team have been doing over the past 9 months? Is the person overseeing this? Tell us a bit about your work on this.
Sure. Not assistant chief yet, so don't jinx me. Still lieutenant. So I oversaw the investigation for the last 9 months. I just made sure that there was, like the chief said, all the investigators played a huge part in it, and all the videos were reviewed from several different angles. We stayed in constant contact initially with the Connecticut State Police, and then after that, the city attorneys, to make sure that we were following all of the procedural steps that were in internal affairs, so we can produce the best work possible.
Are they still on paid administrative leave through this process as well?
Yes, they're still on paid administrative leave since the end of June.
And they'll remain on leave until those hearings are done?
Until the conclusion of the hearing and whatever is decided at the hearings.
How much control do you all have over that portion of it? I need to go back and read it, but specifically the policy for paid administrative leave, is that something that you all have jurisdiction over?
So that's a contractual thing. And, you know, we're in contract negotiations now. So things have been brought up But I think we have to be fair. You know, there's been talk about other departments too. If you're arrested on a felony, you know, go out without money or without paid. So there's, you know, we're in the middle of contract negotiations now, but that is definitely a contract issue.
And I guess I would ask this question too, for Randy's family, I mean, they've been vocal throughout this entire process of swift action and bringing justice. I mean, you kind of highlighted it in your initial remarks, but I guess specifically when it comes to the timeline and your decision to do this, have you spoken with his family, and if so, what were sort of your remarks and exchanges with him?
I notified his sister prior to this press conference because I thought it was important that they heard from me. But I don't want to say what the comments were, but you know, it's a tough situation. He's still not well. You know, there's still a lot of recovery for him, and we still pray for his recovery.
Which sister did you speak with?
Latoya.
Just to clarify the pension issue, you said they don't get a pension unless they've been 10 years. If they do pension, are they eligible to have it revoked?
So we have a bad boy clause in our contract, but I don't believe these charges fall under the bad boy clause. So say Officer Diaz or Sergeant Segui, who have more than 10 years, they will be eligible for a pension, but they have to go to the pension board, and it's the pension board's decision. All right, thank you.
Thank you.